Okay, everybody, welcome to another episode of Alexis Attacks. And this is going to be kind of like a continuation of the previous episode. I actually got like a lot of good feedback about what I was saying about that kind of like relationship between newbies and advanced drivers and bridging that communication gap just so we all just continue to work positively and um, just continue to have a good time to like grow the drifting community. So, with the conversations that I was having and just kind of like looking back on my own experiences over the last year, since I'm kind of coming just past my first year of like really getting into the sport and the hobby, I was just kind of thinking more about that same thing, those kind of like tips, those kind of realizations to just continue to help um, just keep that going, keep those good vibes going, keep everybody helping everybody, and keep the community growing. So I came up with a list. And if you know me, then you know that I'm super like organized and stuff. So my mind thinks in like bullet points. So I came up with a list, like a do's and don'ts. A do's and don'ts for newbie drivers and a do's and don'ts list for more experienced and advanced drivers. So I'm just going to share that with you guys. I hope you appreciate it. I hope you kind of take it to heart and just use it to, like I said, to continue to have a good time and grow the community. So, first, I'm going to start with newbies. I don't know, just going with it. And I've got my notes here. So if you see me like looking like up and down, no shame, full disclosure, because I don't want to mess up my ideas. So I wrote notes. So first, let's go over like the don'ts for the newbies. Okay. So first, don't, it sounds like it should be obvious, but I see it all the time. Don't disturb people while they're driving. Okay. And yes, I should preface this with there are going to be like some inconsistencies that you may see where you when you are driving, um, because there's different levels of familiarity between people, there's different relationships between people, and what you might see like one person do with somebody else coming into the hobby might not be the most appropriate for you as a newbie because you're new. So starting off with, don't disturb people while they're driving. Again, especially if you're new, just because like their level of focus is on their driving. They might not be able to give you the best answer that you're looking for, and you definitely don't want to put, or start off kind of like on a bad foot. Disturbing somebody that you don't know. Now, case in point, my boyfriend, shout out to RC Drift Talk, is totally an advanced driver, and I will totally walk up to him and whisper in his ear while he is driving. So that's what I'm talking about. Like our relationship's different, so he'll respond to me differently, and I also kind of know like how he's driving that day, what he's kind of working on. So there are times where I will not, if he's tuning something and he's going back and forth on the track, I give him the space for that. If he's just driving for enjoyment, yeah, you'll see me walk up and talk to him while he's driving. But again, when you're new to the scene and you're kind of just trying to feel out the scene and feel out people, probably be best not to disturb people when you see them actively like sitting or standing next to the track. You can see their eyes following their cars. They're in the middle of a train or anything like that. So next, don't start off if you're approaching somebody and trying to ask a question or trying to get help or insight or anything. Don't start off with what's the best. What's the best chassis? What's the best tire? What's the best transmitter? Like all those things. The reason is because that answer actually depends, which is the answer that you're not going to want to hear. Yeah, it depends. It depends on drive style. It depends on budget. It depends on compatibility with the other parts of your car. So there's other factors that kind of go into determining ultimately what will work the best for you or what your preference may be as you start to get more driving experience. But in a large, in a global sense, there really isn't, or there's very little like best because there's other factors and because it kind of depends. I'm sure there are like some little like caveats or some little, asterisks, exceptions to that statement. But for the most part, again, new driver coming into it, there really isn't too much at your stage that is going to really immediately be like a best of the best of the best. You might, like I said, develop those preferences, um, develop your style, driving style, and start gravitating to what is best for you. So kind of keep that in mind. Next, don't touch other people's stuff without asking. I feel like that should be like obvious, but I've seen it. And if you definitely want to come into the community, and get make good relationships, and just have a positive experience, realize that people are putting hundreds, thousands, of dollars into their parts. Realize that people often swap out parts, are making adjustments, actively on their cars at the track. So don't touch anything that doesn't belong to you. Even if you think it might be like helping or anything like that, just don't touch. Okay. Next, um, don't think and don't believe that becoming a more experienced driver is going to be fast or it's going to be easy. It definitely takes a lot of time, a lot of investment. So keep that in mind. Don't beat yourself up. Don't get frustrated, as you're putting in your practice hours and stuff like that, to get good at working with your car. It takes time. Don't assume that everybody wants to help. And that's going to help you, not get a bad taste in your mouth for the other people in the drift community. Not everybody wants necessarily to help. And I don't mean that in a selfish way. I mean that in a way that, they're there for stress relief. They're there to have fun. They're there to do their thing. Not everybody wants, or every day, not everybody every day, wants or has the energy to, work or talk new or less experienced people through stuff, and that's okay. So kind of like leave room for that. I've noticed a lot of drivers, in the states and in the different tracks that I've been to, a lot of drivers are actually kind of shy too. They don't really like to talk. They'll come up and or they don't like to come up and start conversations. They might participate or they might talk back to you if you talk to them, but just kind of like keep that in mind. It's not so much that they don't want to help. It might be that focus is elsewhere, or maybe that they're not like the best talker to help or teach somebody, a new skill. And that's cool. Which brings me to my last don't for newbies, which is don't take it personally if somebody, doesn't necessarily want to answer your question, or seem like they, don't want to help you out. It may be that they're focusing on an upcoming comp. They're having a big tuning issue with their car. Again, like I said, a lot of guys, in the drift community are kind of shy and not like big talkers. So they just aren't comfortable talking. So if you kind of get some like weird response, a very quick and dismissive response, or just like feel like, I don't know, just something weird rubbing you the wrong way, about the person, yeah, just don't take it personally. I mean, unless you're a douchebag and nobody would want to talk to you, but that's a whole different conversation, I guess. But other than that, don't take it personally if somebody doesn't want to help. Just find somebody else or ask them if they know somebody else who's available to help. So, those are kind of like my top go-to don'ts for newbies. So, we're going to cover the do's. This is what you should be doing, in my personal opinion and based on my experience, to help you have like the best transition, into the hobby, to just help improve your skill as quickly as possible. So, do number one: if you're going to ask somebody for help, let them know why you chose them for two reasons. One, it flatters them a little bit, and so they might be a little bit more apt to talk to you. And two, because it may be that the question that you ask afterwards, once they know why you sought them out, it actually might give them a little bit of a better opportunity, or like it might kind of get their gears going in a different way to give you the answer that you ultimately are seeking. So if you notice, okay, personal experience. I noticed one of the guys who I really like watching drive, at Tandem RC, Mesa, Arizona, shout out to Tandem. His car, when he goes, or when he would go to like go for like a hairpin or something like that, the back would kick out very quickly. Not forcefully for like losing control, but just very quickly. As opposed to some people have kind of like a soft, like in and out type smoother motion, for their drifting and for their driving. And so when I would ask him, for help, it was nice to be able to go up and just be like, hey, I really like how your car functions like that, or how it kicks out like that when you go in the hairpin. Like, how did you achieve that? Or, my car is kind of close to doing it, but it's a little off. Like, can you point me in the right direction? A little bit of flattery goes a long way, one. And two, it kind of, like I said, gives more insight and gives them more information to be able to kind of like help you a little bit better. Number two, for my newbies, do learn some basics on your own. Okay. Flip the script. If somebody was coming to you with something and was just like, here, this doesn't work. It's not driving. It's not drifting. It's broken. Like, you don't know where to start. It's not a good feeling. Like, you're not motivated to help the person at all. So learn some basics in terms of car parts, car tuning, how those parts and tuning work together to produce the overall drivability of the car. Side note, upcoming episodes. So here's my plug to subscribe to my YouTube channel, support KGG, Quiet Girl Gang, and we'll hook you up with a lot of tips on that stuff. But anyway, learn some of those basics on your own. So again, when you're having the conversation, when you're asking for help, this actually, yes, leads into my next do. Let people know kind of a little bit of what you know before you ask the question. People are going to be way more apt to help you if you can let them know kind of what you've tried, or kind of you've gotten to this point and now you're stuck. They'll be more apt to help like bridge the gap or pick up where you left off or give you another tip or another perspective to look at, versus you just throw your car at them and say, it's not driving, can you fix it? Nobody wants to start from ground zero. So learn some basics on your own and share those basics. When you're talking to somebody, you'll probably have a better conversation and get better results, better information from the person that you're asking the help from. Next, do be very specific with your questioning. When you're asking for help, be as specific as you possibly can when you're asking for that help. Again, so that people know where you're coming from. They're not felt like they're just picking up all your pieces and trying to figure out your entire car life. It just helps the conversation go a lot smoother, and you're gonna get better help and a better answer, guaranteed. The last and probably the most important do for newbies is, guys, you gotta practice. Like, you're not gonna get better. Cars are machines, and machines are only as smart as their operators. Your car performance is not going to get better without solid seat time. So stick your ass in the seat and figure it out. Yeah, it gets frustrating sometimes. I definitely had my couple of months when I like couldn't get around the track, and it was super frustrating. But that seat time helped me to get my sense of touch on my transmitter. Very specifically, that seat time actually helped me figure out that you can adjust the throttle tension on some transmitters. I have the Futaba 4PM. You can adjust the throttle tension to match how like heavy or how light you control your transmitter, or you press into your throttle. That was a huge game changer for me. Wouldn't have figured it out if I wasn't driving and driving and driving and kind of feeling how heavy I was on my throttle to begin with. Had the conversation with somebody at Tandem, and it ended up flipping, or ended up leading to me adjusting that tension. So get that seat time in, guys. You won't regret it. It'll be one of the fastest ways to improve your driving skills so that you start to enjoy it as much as I know you probably want to. So that's all my advice for the newbies. Flipping the script to my more advanced drivers. We're going to do the same thing. We're going to start off with the don'ts. Okay, so number one, this is like literally, I say this to like my friends all the time. Number one, don't. Do not ask a newbie what they want, because we don't know. Yeah, because we're new. Yeah, so a lot of times, one, we don't know, and we also don't recognize sometimes the questions that we're asking have more to do with drive style and not necessarily troubleshooting. Gosh, I wish I had an example off the top of my head. I can't think of anything right now. Totally feel free to comment, a little story or a little blurb if you're watching this and you've got a good example. But I definitely recall times where, I'm asking a question, maybe not necessarily having trouble with my car, but just asking a question in terms of like how to improve. And I would get, well, do you want more or less tension? Do you want more or less camber? And I'm like, well, I don't know what I want. Well, what does that do? And so the question that I ask back are like, well, what does that do and how does that affect things? That does go back into a little bit of learning about driving and tuning, which obviously I'm doing, but it definitely helps if leading into the next don't for your advanced drivers. Um, Kind of ask and encourage the drivers to like tell them what you know, but not in a kind of like overbearing kind of pop quiz way. Okay, so that you can kind of get a feel for what they do know and maybe get a little hint of kind of where they're going in terms of drivability and drive style. And that might help you be able to give them like an answer that might work for them a little bit more. I'll probably touch on that with another couple do's and don'ts in a second. Next big do, or sorry, next big don't. Uh, don't use too much lingo with newbies, or if you do, kind of like maybe if you can, kind of be a little bit more mindful of it and explain it because sometimes we don't, again, being new, we don't always know what some of those things are. I talked about this in a previous episode, but centering the servo, like I didn't really get exactly what that meant. I had a hard time understanding until somebody really broke it down to me. Side bite. Trying to think. Again, somebody who does not have like the strongest like sense of car knowledge, but is coming into the hobby just because they've seen it, it looks fun, they want to try it type thing. If I think of some, I'll put it in the comments or you guys can comment. But just some of the very kind of basic everyday thing. When you guys talk about boost and turbo, a lot what I've kind of started realizing when I'm reading through like my ESC manual and looking at programming, like the manual sometimes, and I have an AccuVad's Yaris, by the way. The manual has like different boost settings. So it'll have like your boost RPM ranges. It'll have just different types of boost settings. But what I started finding out is when people just generally say what's your boost or what's your turbo, they mean the timing, the boost timing or the turbo timing, which there is usually a setting for that, like on the ESC or in the manual. But there's also like other descriptors that use the word boost. So for a long time, people would ask me that and I wouldn't know exactly what they meant because in my mind, I had like 4 different factors to choose from. So just kind of like keep lingo in mind type thing. Uh, and this is just to keep the community just on on the same page in terms of like growing the community. In a lot of instances, there's not really a right or a wrong. There's definitely strong preferences, and those preferences have consequences in terms of successful driving. But yeah, not too much absolute rights or wrongs. So it might not necessarily be that at best in terms of like again establishing that newbie advanced driver relationship or having just better communication so everybody just talks better. Don't ask who told them something if they're trying to express some information that they've come across. It kind of like, it kind of starts pitting drivers against each other. And again, what we're usually talking about when we're making decisions or talking to people about options, we're talking about preferences. We're talking about preferences and drive style. So, if I come and I say, you know, my front camber is set at, 11 right now. Well, who told you to set it that high? I mean, it kind of, it makes a newer driver feel like a little, uncomfortable, like they did something wrong per se. And it doesn't really solve anything. So just take that information that they've given you and just kind of work with it, go with it. Again, don't, and I think I kind of touched on this earlier, don't ask too much, don't pop quiz, by asking like, well, what are things set at? They may not know, or they just might need a little bit more time like getting that information. I know I didn't know, what my front and rear camber and my front and rear, or mostly front, toe was set out off the top of my head. I didn't know what my boost and turbo timing, I didn't know what my motor was set at off the top of my head. So they definitely might not know. So again, making them feel welcome into the community, making them feel open to asking for help and stuff like that. Don't pop quiz them too much. They probably don't know. Um, Next point. Don't forget that you were once a newbie too. Yeah, so when they're coming and asking for help and stuff like that, and we've already gone over some do's and don'ts for them, but just remember that you were once in that position. So again, I'm not necessarily saying that to force anybody to help people if you don't want to. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is if you choose to, it might have to come with just a little bit of patience because they're learning a new skill as well. Last don't assume, and I've had this conversation, or I've had this experience, and I think I talked about it a little bit earlier with some of the don'ts for newbies. Don't assume that newbies know like the basics of track etiquette, especially when they see you break it. Because advanced, like, let's be honest, like, I'm even starting to break things, like, break some of those track etiquette rules. Like, but newbies may not understand the conditions. We like break certain rules of track etiquette, like, under the right conditions where it does not impair or interfere with anybody else's driving. And, like, we know that. And I know how that I'm saying we for myself right now, even though I kind of classified myself as a newbie a little bit earlier. I guess I'm like in between at this point. Um, but yeah, keep in mind that like they see us do certain things and don't understand the context. So then when they go and do it, they think it's okay, but then they get their asses called out for it. And they might not understand why. So again, building a positive community, everybody helping everybody. And the first example that comes to mind is stopping your car in the middle of the track and like picking it up from like a non-parked area, like in the middle of a sweep or a hairpin. I know that I have done it. I know that I have done it off the top of my head. And you guys have probably seen me if you're following my Instagram. Towards the end of the night, everybody's dusting off their cars, and I'm doing those last couple of laps at the end of the night, and I'm on the track by myself. Yeah. New people might not realize that context of I'm on the track by myself, but they see me like reach down. I'll drive the car to my, to my stool, or to where I'm standing, but it's like right in the middle of a sweeper or something like that, and they'll see me bend down and pick it up. I gotta kind of take responsibility for that, I guess, if I'm about being a little bit of an example, because then when they turn around and do the same thing, but they do it Saturday at 4 p.m. when there's 12 cars or more on the track, but they don't always like realize the difference. So I definitely think shout out to like track owners that if there are ways to post like little reminders about etiquette, or make sure that you're kind of just chatting that up like at your track. I think that can go a long way because people don't know what they don't know. But kind of keep that in mind. If people see us doing stuff or see you doing stuff, they might think that it's okay. So then if they go to do it, it kind of creates a little bit of a double standard. So finally, closing out, talking about the do's for our advanced drivers. So do be willing to listen and kind of almost like interpret what a newer driver is saying. Listen to them describe what the problem is, and that's kind of why one of the do's for them was be as specific as you can. If you choose, to help and offer help, be willing to listen to them describe the issue and then have to like interpret what the actual problem is, because again, they might not have that base of knowledge to know exactly what the like mechanical or technical issue is with their car. Do let them know if you're not comfortable or not in the right frame of mind or whatever it is. If you don't want to help them, just let them know you don't want to help them. And if you know somebody who like loves helping, loves answering questions, like, refer them, or, point to that next person and be like, hey, I might not be the best person, or hey, this isn't a good time for me, but that dude over there, ask him, he may be able to help you. There's nothing wrong with deferring help if you're not willing or wanting to give it. And you're entitled to that. You don't have to give an excuse or a reason, and it doesn't make you a bad person or anything. Not that you guys ever really care about that stuff, but you know what I mean? Like, we don't want to create, I guess, an atmosphere of like animosity because like you feel like compelled to answer the question because somebody asked you, and then they keep coming to you, remember, because they might have seen something that they like in your driving. So they're coming to you because they see something that they like, but you don't necessarily want to help them out. That's totally fine. Just tell them you're not the right person. It'll help you feel better. It'll probably help them feel better too. And that's why I always, or also advise them not to take it personally because it probably isn't. It's just not, a right match or right fit or something like that. Do give options. So remember when the first don't was like, don't ask what newbies want because they might not know. Give them options and almost like the consequences of those options for them to be able to give you an answer of, where they want to go with the information that you've given them. The only example I can think of right now is like rear camber. So like increasing the rear camber may give a little, I think it's less contact between the rear wheel when it's sliding, and may make sliding a little bit more like increase a little bit more. Less camber might increase like the contact of the tire on the surface, and that might decrease slideability. So do you want to feel like you can slide a little bit more, or do you want to feel like you can slide a little bit less? Kind of like breaking it down and giving them those options might help you guys have a better conversation, kind of like overall. Next, there's only a couple more left. Oh, if helping people is your thing and talking and helping newbies is totally your thing, define things, like explain different settings and different purposes for settings or different purposes for parts, kind of like as they're asking the question. A lot of newbies will probably appreciate the extra information. So if that's you, if you're that type of person, yeah, give them the extra information and explain things as you're giving them the solutions, instead of just grabbing their car, adjusting and giving it back and being like, see if that helps. Like empowering more drivers in the community by helping them actually learn can go a long way. Final do for my advanced drivers, do realize that newbies are watching. And again, this is all under the context of we're all here to have a good time. We're all here to grow the community and all just have fun, be positive, have a kick-ass time. So just realize that new people are watching you, and you guys know who you are. Like, let's be honest. You guys who are like kick-ass drivers out there, like, we know who you are. And that's cool. I'm not saying be somebody that you're not. I'm not saying do things that you wouldn't normally do. But what I am suggesting is just kind of like keep an eye that may attract new people to watch you and then therefore see something that they like in your driving and therefore come up to you and ask for advice or help or something like that. So just realize, they're not trying to bother. They probably see something that they like in your driving style. So that might be, again, part of the conversation when they're asking questions, is to let them know the reason that my car does this is because I've said it like this because that's the type of way that I want to drive the car. So if somebody else's car is doing something different, it's not wrong or bad. It's just maybe that's the way they want to drive their car. So that's my final do. Just always remember that if you're, and like I said, you guys know who you are out there. Keep an eye and just know that new people are watching you. They probably really like what they see. They want to drive just as well as you. So you may be a little bit more of a target for wanting for them wanting advice from you or wanting help with their cars from you. Last one, this don't is for newbies. And like this, it's a do and a don't. Two sides of the same coin. It's for everybody. It's for newbies, it's for advanced drivers, everybody in the drift community. Don't be an asshole. Be nice. Okay, we're all here to have fun. We are all here to have fun. Doesn't mean we can't take things seriously. I'm very serious about my driving. Yeah, but I also want to have fun. So yeah, like, don't be an asshole. Don't be a douchebag. Just have a good time, be nice to everybody. I guess I'll just leave it with that. I hope this helps, you know, aside from helping people to learn how to work with their cars. I hope some of the stuff that I do in my episodes just helps the community to get better as a whole. So there you go. Do's and don'ts for newbies and advanced drivers to make the driving and drifting community world a better place. All right, guys, thanks so much for tuning in. Once again, make sure that you're subscribing to the Quiet Girl Gang channel. I also copy this on my personal YouTube, Alexis underscore KGGRC, so you can follow me there as well. Have a great time. Happy drifting. Get sideways, guys, and I'll catch you next time at the next episode.